Okay, so we are back with another short video on how to fill out our past tense booklet for Spanish 102. Again, we are working with preterite tense verbs in Chapter 6. And remember, this book is going to serve you good all the way through Chapters 6, 7, 8, and 9. So, like I said, we're still in Chapter 6 with the preterite tense. Remember, in Spanish, there are two different past tenses. There's the preterite and there's the imperfect. We're not going to get to the imperfect until Chapter 8. So Chapters 6 and 7 deal with the preterite tense. So far we have filled out our tabs for our regular AR verbs, regular AR, ER verbs in the preterite tense. And we've also filled out our tab with our spelling changes in the preterite tense. So today we're going to add to our third tab, which will be my orange tab right here. And we are going to title that tab Stem Changing Verbs. Stem changing verbs in the preterite. Okay, so we have our stem changing verbs in the preterite tense. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to write down on our sheet here about stem changers in the preterite tense. And there's 3 rules, and you need to leave yourself some room for an example verb. Okay, for an example verb. So let's go ahead and start. And I might take some notes here on the page, on my pad right here, my legal pad, so that I don't take up all the room right here. This is where you're going to write your rules and your example verb. But as I teach you a little bit more about stem changing, I might expand on our 3 rules and our example on our notepad here. Okay? So rule number 1. Let's go ahead and write down rule number 1. Rule number 1. Stem changes occur in the preterite in IR verbs only. Okay? So there we go. Number 1, stem changes occur in the preterite in IR verbs only. That means if you come across a verb that was a stem changer in the present tense, if it ends in AR or ER, it's not going to stem change in the preterite tense. It won't stem change in the past. But if you run across a verb that stem changes in the present tense and it's an IR verb, then it will stem change in the preterite tense. It will stem change if it's an IR verb. And it's stem changed in the present tense. Okay? All right, so number 2. Number 2 is when it makes the stem change, it's only going to make half the stem change. It'll only make half the stem change. It's only going to make half the stem change. So when I say half, see, this is what I wrote up here. It's only going to make half the stem change. Half the stem change means, like, remember in the present tense, we had stem changers, and it would stem change O to UE or E to IE. Well, now it's only going to stem change from O to U and E to I. So instead of O to UE and E to IE, it's going to stem change just from O to U and E to I. So it's going to make half that stem change. Okay, so the verbs will only make half the stem change. Remember, these are only IR verbs. So let's take an example. All right, remember in present tense in Spanish 101, we looked at the verb dormir. Dormir. And dormir was an example of an O to UE stem changer. Right? So that O would change to UE. We also learned the verb preferir in Spanish 101. Preferir. Preferir was an E to IE stem changer. And which E stems changes? Because there's two there in that verb preferir. Which one will make that stem change E to IE? Always the second one. This is the one that's going to stem change E to IE. And we learned the verb servir. And servir is E to I. So these were the three stem changers that you learned in Spanish 101 in the present tense. Maybe we should note that over here. This is present tense. That's the present. Now I chose all three of them are IR verbs. Notice how I chose all IR verbs. That's because in the past tense, they will make a stem change. In the preterite tense, they are going to make a stem change, but only half the stem change. So for example, in the preterite tense, instead of O to U, UE, it's going to go O to U. And then these two down here are going to go E to I. So in the preterite tense, that's what our stem change is going to look like. So here you have an example of what it looked like in the present tense, and then what it's going to look like in the preterite tense. All right, good. So we're ready for rule number 3 to add to your book. Rule number 3, the stem change changes will only occur in third person singular and plural. So there we go. That's our third and final rule. Stem changes will only occur in third person, singular, and plural. So you got to remember these 3 rules. Very first thing you do when you're working in the preterite tense, right, doing these activities in the past tense using the preterite, you're going to look, and if the verb is an IR verb, you need to stop and ask yourself, is this a stem changer? Did this verb stem change in the present tense? If you don't know, you got to look it up. If it did stem change in the present tense, and it's an IR verb, then you go to rule 2. Rule 2 is it's going to make a stem change in the preterite, but only half. So it's either going to be O to U or E to I. But that stem change, that half of the stem change, is only going to occur in third person, singular, and plural. That's the only place it's going to occur. Okay? And let me give you an example. And I'm going to give you the example on my tablet, my pad, because it's a little bit bigger. So we are going to do the verb dormir. Dormir means to sleep. To sleep. And if you remember, in the present tense, it's O to UE, and in the past tense, it's O to U. So I'm going to put that up there for us to remember. See right here? We have our present tense and our past tense. Present, past. Okay? So when I conjugate it in the preterite tense, I'm going to use the regular IR verb ending. So I'm going to go up to my first page of my book, right? And I'm going to look, dormir is an IR verb. So I'm going to look right here. I'm going to look at my IR verbs on this side. So I'm going to see that the yo form starts with an I with an accent mark. So the yo form is going to be dormi. And then tu form is going to be dormiste, because that's my IR verb endings. Now, down here at the bottom, this bottom row right here, that's third person, right? This is third person singular, and this is third person plural. So this is where our stem changes are going to take place. We're still going to use these endings for the verb, but we're going to have to make a stem change. So I'm going to write down D-U-R-M-I-O. I'm going to show y'all in a moment. The nosotros form is dormimos. Use the imos ending that you have on your page right here for IMOS. And down here again for third person plural, right here in this box, this is our third person plural. You're going to use your ending ieron, but you're going to have to make the stem changing. So it's D-U-R, durmieron. So let me show you what I did here. I conjugated the verb dormir. I took off my IR ending and I put my new endings on for the past tense, right? The IR verbs for the present tense. Iste, ia, imas, ieron. But down here in this third row, this is third person singular, third person plural. I changed the O to a U. Do y'all see where I changed the O to a U? So when we make a stem changer, it's just going to be down here, down in that third row, that group down there. That's where your stem change. That's where your stem changing takes place. Okay? All right. So I suggest in your book you go ahead and put a copy there of our example verb. So let's use dormir as our example verb. So I'm going to write it in my copy here. Dormir, to sleep. And then I'm going to do O to UE for present, O to U for past. And I'm going to conjugate it so I can remember here how it works. Just like I did on my pad. And I ran out of room. Hopefully y'all didn't. Okay? But I'm going to circle my bottom line there. So I noticed there that I have my stem change. That's where my stem change took place. Right? Okay. And so this works for any IR verb that's a stem changer. Any IR verb that's a stem changer. And remember, I gave you 3 common ones right here. And you'll see these probably in your homework and on your quizzes and possibly in our test. But there's more. These aren't the only ones. So if you're not sure if the verb's a stem changer or not, and it ends in IR, you need to look it up. And it'll tell you in your book if it's a stem changer. And remember, a good hint is quite a few of those reflexive verbs that end in IR are stem changers. So if you see a reflexive verb that ends in IR, it probably is a stem changer. Okay? All right, so I hope that helped with your stem changing verbs. We've added another page to our book, and in Chapter 7, we'll be adding even more.